This is the True North Fantasy Football Podcast, sponsored by Monkey Knife Fight and very proud members of the Fantasy Points Media Group. I'm Tyrell McLaughlin at TNFF Tyrell. At True North FFB is where the crew is at TNFF Pod. I am fitting to talk some best ball with y'all. Today, I'm going to do a live best ball draft, as you can see on my screen, and we do still have a little bit of time, so maybe I will run down what we do when we kick off the best ball. I think one of our first things we'll do is input our customized rankings, kind of a little cheat code when we do these live drafts. We have to rely on our customized rankings a lot more so than if we were doing a slow draft best ball. This is also just your regular run-of-the-mill classic best ball tournament. It is not a fantasypoints.com best ball championship because we know we have to alter some of our strategies, implement some big tournament strategies if it was one of those tournaments, but it's not. So it's going to be a pretty typical best ball draft where the winner takes all. We do 20 rounds. And just in case people are completely unfamiliar with best ball, maybe I'll do a quick rundown because, take the mystique out of it, because starting slow is important with best ball. I think I was one of these people once upon a time, hearing all about best ball, but not knowing what it was all about. And really anything new can be intimidating to jump into. Best ball, though, not compared to something like DFS or anything. I'd argue best ball is the easiest way to play fantasy football. And inarguably, best ball is the easiest from a roster management standpoint because there is none. So if you're asking what is best ball, it's basically the antithesis of a dynasty league. There is no trades, no waivers, no nada. In best ball, you just draft a team and walk away, Brother Ali style. There is zero in-season management of any kind. And that's the big hook, the appeal of best ball, right? All you're doing is drafting fantasy teams. And say your draft is 18 rounds, you would draft 2 to 3 quarterbacks, 4 to 6 running backs, 6 to 9 wide receivers, and 2 to 3 tight ends. And stay tuned because, we're going to do some separate videos, just really sinking our teeth into things like roster construction and later videos and podcasts. But, right now, just talking about how glorious best ball is, another thing that it just completely encapsulates is what is all of our favorite parts or our favorite day when it comes to fantasy football leagues. And that's draft day, right? Aside from being the best sports movie of all time, draft day is everybody's favorite part of a fantasy football league. Obviously, just kidding about draft day. It's not even a top 5 Kevin Costner sports movie. Come on. But we all love the feeling of completing a fantasy football draft, looking at our rosters after and falling into that deep, deep, deep trance of satisfaction. And best ball captures this. We can do as many real fantasy football drafts as we'd like. And just remember, your commitment to each league ends with each individual draft upon completion. And I should mention, best ball is offered on lots of these platforms as early as February, making best ball kind of the way to stay fantasy frosty and a way to kind of avoid relinquishing our great love of fantasy football during the off season. Just thinking about what is the greatest love story of our time, it's definitely Bull Durham or Tin Cup, right? Hashtag elite Kevin Costner sports movies. So when I get in here, you can see that I am picking in the 8 slot. So it doesn't really affect my draft position. Will definitely influence your draft. But what I'm saying is an early part of your best ball draft will dictate what kind of strategies you might implement, what kind of team building philosophies you might adopt in this particular draft. It will come down to how the early rounds in your draft falls. There is different ways I could display this. So, after this one is out, maybe throw in the comments if you prefer how I am sharing it right now, which is basically so you can see how I'm going about it. You can see on my screen, like my rankings are here, and on the other side of it, you can see kind of all the comings and goings. The other one I can do is just the draft board, where it just runs down the pick like you see in that format. But now I kind of have to filibuster for a couple minutes, I think what we're going to do tonight, live best balls are obviously about talking a lot of best ball strategy, letting somebody watch me do one as I go through it so they can see what they enjoyed, what they didn't enjoy, how they would attack it, how they wouldn't attack it. But I also want to be on top of values and trends and following some average draft position trajectories. So a guy like Julio Jones or Calvin Ridley, just all that ferocious fallout from the Julio trade is something we're going to observe right off the top of our draft here. I don't think Derrick Henry will be, falling to the 7 or 8 spot or anything where I'm picking, but when it gets to Calvin Ridley, AJ Brown, Julio Jones, we want to see where these guys are going. We want to see if Anthony Firkser is still a 15th, 16th round pick. These are the things that we want to observe in our best ball drafts, because it is another component of doing best balls, is allowing yourself to stay on top of the market, stay ahead of trends, and see where these players might be heading in terms of average draft position. Not to mention you've made these difficult decisions dozens of times in a best ball draft. So when you're there in your home league with your buddies and they're pulling their hair out with that clock running down, you've sifted through these tiers. You know who the players to take are and who the avoids are. So we're going to definitely pinpoint some of those as well as we go through. And obviously we just like to see, we like to be pointing out some really good values, looking at other teams and how they might be, what kind of strategies they might be implementing. So lots to go through in a live best ball, and we are about 30 seconds out. My sound is on. I don't know how loud it is. That's always the tough question. So almost universally, you'll see Christian McCaffrey, maybe Dalvin Cook go first overall. If you see Dalvin Cook go first overall, I might argue that a lot of people implement what's called diversification. So think of it like a stock portfolio. When you're drafting multiple best ball leagues, you end up with a portfolio of players and you have a specific amount of exposure to them. So you might have shares of a player, or you might have very few shares of a player. And if you just happen to get the luck of the draw and, just a strange amount of your best ball drafts, you end up getting the first overall selection, you might want to diversify a little bit. Instead of taking Christian McCaffrey all 20 times that you pick first overall, you might take him 15 times and take Dalvin Cook a handful of times to diversify. We did not see that in this draft. We saw Christian McCaffrey go uno a uno. And let's see what my volume's at. You can also look at your league mates, make sure that you are in a sharp draft. You'll typically recognize a lot of the same old degenerates in these drafts, so that's always fun. This guy, get off my lawn. I like that name. Because I am often described as an old, salty man. The second overall guy is about to auto pick, so we will monitor that. And Alvin Kamara, you can see, is my 3rd overall ranked player. You can see Travis Kelce is my 4th overall ranked player. I don't necessarily, like I was getting at with best ball, you can really manipulate your shares when it comes to that. And Derrick Henry at the 1-3, so nobody is worried about Julio. The identity in that Titans offense is not up for debate. It is Derrick Henry's show to run. I'm going to try and avoid a lot of the rabbit hole stuff when it comes to breaking down the Titans trade, because I'm going to put a separate video out about that. I've given a lot of my thoughts about that as well on Twitter. But yeah, Derrick Henry doesn't move very much, but he continues to be an outlier in every sense of the word in terms of, he just had a 2,000-yard rushing season and he was barely a top 5 running back. Like, it just blows my mind. That Derrick Henry really needs to have a supernatural season because of how little pass catching he's getting. And speaking of outliers, Nick Chubb, I just had Scott Barrett on the podcast last night on the True North Fantasy Football program. It's in the feed there. And he was talking about we were talking about Nick Chubb and Derrick Henry and how Nick Chubb is also at risk of having to be an outlier because of how little pass catching upside he comes with. And when you get into the discussion of outliers, it's defined by being a very low percentage of a group, right? That is what an outlier is. So if we have Nick Chubb and we have Derrick Henry, it's really hard to start arguing for even guys like Jonathan Taylor. Like, I know these guys are outliers in every sense, but it's interesting that we're all of a sudden having, 30% of our top 12 running back rankings defined as outliers in a sense. And I think Jonathan Taylor is at risk of being that so long as Nyheim Hines is there. So we have another auto drafter. And Chubb the guy got beaked for taking Nick Chubb in the chat. So Saquon Barkley at 8. I'm fine with that. Like, I'm not the biggest Saquon Barkley fan. I definitely think there's not concerns that he's been injured in back-to-back seasons, but he has been injured in back-to-back seasons. You lost all your best ball leagues when you took Saquon Barkley. Now, I think an interesting note is this will by no means affect how I approach my running back position. I have now built in a top 5 running back, and I will treat Saquon Barkley as such. I won't be worried about injuries. I won't be looking to add Devontae Booker to handcuff him. If I lose Saquon Barkley to injury, I've lost this league already. I am a very strong proponent in thinking like that during your best ball drafts, because you are losing so much upside and you are buying 2 different range of outcomes if you're worried about Saquon Barkley's health. So all these picks have been running backs aside from Travis Kelce, who went at the 1-5. Speaking of 5, that's his number. 5 straight years he's been the tight end 1. He's giving you a massive advantage. I'd argue nobody was more valuable than Travis Kelce in fantasy football in last season. And, he's just an elite tight end. I don't think there's any worry about age or anything cropping up at this point. In fact, he just, set the NFL record for the most receiving yards by a tight end ever. So I think Travis Kelce is a really good pick at 1-5. I think it's funny that people are finally coming around to the advantage that Travis Kelce can offer you. Jonathan Taylor at the 1-7, Saquon was me. Ezekiel Elliott at the 1-9. People are hoping he returns to Regal status. Cam Akers, I think, is interesting. I really would love to be drafting more of Cam Akers, but I would really love to know that he's going to see that, 30, 40, 50 catches. I think that's like the big X factor for Cam Akers. Austin Eckler. I love Austin Eckler, and I want to see who he paired Austin Eckler with Tyreek Hill. So sometimes you go running back with an Austin Eckler, who is an outlier in his own sense when it comes to a player who doesn't necessarily need 300 touches to score 300 fantasy points. So I would love to add Stefon Diggs here. He is my wide receiver 1 or 2. I have him and Tyreek Hill in a tier of their own. I think Stefon Diggs is a little more palatable. Like, if you think of what happened last year, like he scored 328 fantasy points. And so did other wide receivers like So we had Devontae Adams, who scored 358 fantasy points last year in PPR. Tyreek scored 328, just a bit more than Stefon Diggs. What Stefon Diggs did was not have to score 15 plus touchdowns to accomplish that. So I think that's the big X factor. He scored just 8 touchdowns. Devontae Adams and Tyreek combined for 33 receiving touchdowns. So, and I think Tyreek had a pair of rushing touchdowns as well. Basically, they both literally had twice as many touchdowns as Stefon Diggs last year, total touchdowns. Both had more than twice as many as Stefon Diggs. Yet Stefon Diggs scored about the same as Tyreek Hill, and about 30 points fewer than Devontae Adams. And if there's one big screaming regression this year, it might be Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay or Denver, wherever the fuck ever. Tyreek Hill, Antonio Gibson, and Aaron Jones, like that guy, we would get along really well because Antonio Gibson and Aaron Jones are huge targets of mine. Devontae Adams at the 2-3, DeAndre Swift at the 2-4. I guess they're not worried about Gurley signing. I'm a little bit worried about DeAndre Swift playing for a team that is full tank nation in 2021. That's what I worry about. I know that offensive line is very, very strong in Detroit. Lots of positive comments about him catching the ball out of the backfield in training camp. But DeAndre Swift could easily score under 5 touchdowns next year. And that's just not necessarily the guy I want to go out and get, because I don't think, I think he can catch balls out of the backfield. Do I think he's an 80 catch running back a la Alvin Kamara? No, I don't think that. So, that's why I have a little bit of reluctance with DeAndre Swift in that early second round. I would much prefer Najee Harris, who's, the rookie for the Pittsburgh Steelers. DeAndre Hopkins, I think it was Jeff Lambert tweet out cartoons of all the players. And DeAndre Hopkins looks like a woman. I hate to say it. It's a funny little cartoon. And I'm sure that's I didn't go there for the comments, but I just saw that on my timeline in passing. DK Metcalf is going ahead of AJ Brown. We wanted to see where AJ Brown goes. So he was starting to move his way all the way up to the top of the second round there. Top 5 wide receiver range, but he is definitely, falling a little bit further, but not all the way to that 2-3 turn like where he was, before the NFL draft and everything, where we weren't sure what Tennessee was going to do to replace Jonnu Smith, to replace Corey Davis, to replace Josh Reynolds, to replace Khalif Raymond, which is to say they have a ton of vacated volume there. AJ Brown is interesting. Like, do we think the Titans offense is so good that they should have all these guys going this high in ADP? Like, we'll see where Julio Jones settles in this draft, but I'd be less worried about AJ Brown, less worried about Derrick Henry than I would Julio Jones. But I'm not without worries when it comes to AJ Brown. Like, I think his air yards are affected with Julio coming in. I think people would be shocked how unbelievably low volume this passing game has been in Tennessee. Like, it is a concern. They didn't even throw the ball 500 times last year. And if you just do back of the napkin, 25% of the targets on a 500 pass attempt team is just 125 targets. And that just doesn't scream second round pick, right? But I think AJ Brown is the one who can remain on top. He has that built-in rapport and connection with Ryan Tannehill, and I think he might get the easier targets in terms of Julio absorbing a lot of those play action deep targets and air yards and what have you. So we do have a couple auto drafters. I don't know if that makes it better, worse, slower, faster. Obviously, he took Kamara in round 1, so like who knows? Maybe he made it to me in that one. But we also see some early tight ends going here with George Kittle and Darren Waller. J.K. Dobbins, I heard at a press conference with Harborough, and he's talking about just how much J.K. Dobbins has been working on his pass catching. That is going to be a trope we're going to hear all offseason. The Ravens' whole running back position won't catch 50 passes next year. So just don't listen to that one. J.K. Dobbins should be going in the running back dead zone. He is arguably a top 5 talent in the entire NFL. He's just not going to see the pass catching work, meaning he needs to put up about 1,500 yards and 15 touchdowns to be a top 10 running back, which sounds extreme, and it is, but that's how severe the effect is when you're not catching passes in full PPR formats. George Kittle and Darren Waller, I think, are good picks. I'm a big proponent of early tight end, and this is where it stops for me for early tight end. I'm not taking Kyle Pitts at 3-5 or anything. Joe Mixon at the 3-1 is a steal. Calvin Ridley going behind A.J. Brown would be interesting to a lot of people, I think. And I should probably concentrate on who I'm going to pick. I really like Robert Woods. Keenan Allen is probably the highest ADP. I just have so little Keenan Allen. Maybe I should take some Keenan Allen on a team where I have Stephon Diggs. I don't mind grabbing a target hog here. But let's see who my highest ranked players are, because if I could maybe try and do like an Amari Cooper, a CeeDee Lamb, I could try and do a Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, and really start to build a team here, which is really appealing, but I would do it with Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp here. Robert Woods might seem early in the 3rd round, and it definitely probably seems early going ahead of Keenan Allen, but fuck it. I do what I want. Honestly, guys, I don't know what the appeal is with Keenan Allen. Yeah, he scored 245 fantasy points last year. So did a lot of these guys in this range. I bet Robert Woods scored right around 250 fantasy points in PPR himself. Keenan Allen is so much less in a good situation than people make it out to be. So number one, last year, Keenan Allen was up to his old self. He caught almost 100 balls, had over 150 targets, all that stuff. But he had under 1,000 yards receiving. I can see it right here. He had 100 catches and didn't hit 1,000 yards receiving. Keenan Allen had 100 catches, but didn't hit 1,000 yards receiving on an offense that we are assuming is the best offense he's ever been in, which is definitely true. Unfortunately, Keenan Allen isn't benefiting from the advantageous work that we see in that offense. The high leverage, 40-plus yard touchdowns, the air yards, the bullet arm, the extended plays, everything Herb Kidd is bringing us. Keenan Allen is the opposite. He's just, if anything, a de-incentivizer for Justin Herbert doing his thing because the ADOT is just so low. And so I just don't see the upside for Keenan Allen, a guy who just set a career high in touchdowns last year, which is definitely the upside if his offense is better. Maybe he scores more, but with Jared Cook coming in, and I just, Mike Williams on a contract here, I just have a lot of worries about Keenan Allen. Not to mention, I really do like other wide receivers in that offense. Not Mike Williams per se, who's in a contract year this year. But I very much like Tyron Johnson. I like Jalen Guyton. We love Canadian Josh Plummer, who's already making waves. And somebody else kind of came out of nowhere that I was reading about as well in camp. I totally, his name is totally slipping me right now. But yeah, I am very much fine taking Robert Woods over Keenan Allen. And I cannot believe Keenan Allen is like the most surefire second or third round pick in fantasy. It's amazing to me. Like I have him, ranked right in this range, but I really do want like Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Amari Cooper. I want all these guys over him for real. Just because I see the upside with them, and I also see the similar floor as I do with Keenan Allen, who might not catch 100 passes next year because he is getting up there in terms of age. But Keenan Allen is a solid wide receiver. I just don't think he's a guy who's going to pay off on wide receiver 2 prices. You're going to get a wide receiver 2 out of him if he pays off, and you're not going to get wide receiver 1 numbers. And we know Keenan Allen has always lacked upside. He's just not that top 5 wide receiver. So looking at this, I probably will go Cooper Kupp unless I CeeDee Lamb is a tough one. DJ Moore is another tough one, but these are guys who have actually slipped into the 5th round at times too. So this is the range of the draft. We're definitely hammering wide receivers. I'm probably in my mind, as soon as I took Saquon Barkley, I'm pretty much doing a modified 0 RB build where I just add 1 running back. And unless one really jumps off the page at me, I will not be adding another one. And so Terry McLaurin went right before me. Michael Thomas in the middle of the 3rd round, I think, is a steal. Allen Robinson, I think Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Joe Mixon in the 3rd rounds are steals. Calvin Ridley and Justin Jefferson going behind A.J. Brown. I thought that was interesting. Calvin Ridley in the 3rd round. I think maybe people are a little bit worried because he went under the knife. We got news that he had surgery. So just for the record here, having Stefon Diggs on my team, I know I'm about to do the Cooper Kupp build here, which is probably early for Cooper Kupp as well, if you think about him going closer to the 5th round more often than not. But what I was going to say is if I wanted to, or if I felt compelled to add Josh Allen to this team to stack Stefon Diggs with Josh Allen, I would almost have to do it in the 4th round. You wouldn't be able to wait until pick 56, which is my next pick. I think that would be a little bit risky to wait that long. So I want to go over some of these picks here. Yeah, what a great little run of value there. 3-7 for the Terry McLaurin. The Calvin Ridley, I just want to say that I think people are worried about the foot, went under the knife, and that is he had a foot injury in 2018. He was battling a foot injury last year, maybe it was ankle in 2018, but Calvin Ridley has been banged up quietly. And I think some people are still hesitant about calling him a true wide receiver 1. If there is a dip in ADP, I'm buying that dip because I had a little bit. I don't love Calvin Ridley in the 2nd round, but I love him in the 3rd round. I do actually. I kind of love him in the 2nd round. Michael Thomas, I absolutely love in the middle of the 3rd round. Josh Jacobs, way too early at the 310. Miles Sanders, I think, is a bit early at the 311. Miles Sanders is definitely the guy in that dead zone at the running back position this year, though, that I think really could surprise people or at least quell a lot of the concerns that we're coming into the season with. More so than Josh Jacobs, who seems like he's in a very defined role with Kenyon Drake in that backfield. And he's gonna cede a lot of the pass catching, which is just too bad for a team in Las Vegas, who's going to be the worst team in their division next year. And what I was saying about the running back dead zone, we should why you see so many wide receivers going in this range is because wide receivers just have spectacular hit rates, whether you're talking about 200 fantasy points, 250 fantasy points, wide receiver 1s, wide receiver 2s, whatever threshold you want to set, wide receivers have exceptional hit rates in this range of the draft. Think about pick 30 to 70 in your draft, rounds 3 to 6, whatever you want to call it. And at the same time, these running backs that you draft in this range year after year after year have absolutely brutal hit rates. And it's because we're really trying to paint a picture for these guys where, they're just not bell cows, so to speak, or they have multiple issues that they have to overcome, like Josh Jacobs not seeing pass catching, like Miles Sanders just being in a 6.5 win team offense with a lot of risks of ceding some volume and not holding up to a large workload. So I thought that was interesting. Like, if I'm on the turn there, did Godwin already go? So I would have definitely, like, he took Mike Evans and Amari Cooper. I love Amari Cooper, but I would have taken Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, or I would have taken my Amari Cooper and CD Lamb. Like, that guy had a really amazing opportunity to stack players there. And I know because he's picking at the 3-4 turn, he's not going to be picking till the very end of the 5th, early 6th. Maybe Dak Prescott goes before that point, but nevertheless, I think that's a big lapse in judgment. I would be definitely looking to start a team build at that point. Julio Jones in the 4th round. So he definitely is still going as a value for some people. My problem is I definitely downgraded him when it comes to moving to Tennessee in that low volume offense, going from Atlanta, where a wide receiver has led the NFL in air yards 3 years straight, and just the end zone targets, the air yards, the wide receiver scoring by PPR position is just insane in Atlanta under Matt Ryan. And I know on that side of things, we also have to talk about Arthur Smith, the identity in Atlanta, and maybe that it is actually up for debate now that Julio is gone. Josh Allen went pick after me. I said if I wanted to, I would probably have to take Josh Allen here. I wouldn't get him in the 5th. And sure enough, he went right after me in the 4th round, which is very early. So who am I going to grab now? It's pretty easy. I'm really going to be chasing Matthew Stafford to add to Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp. What I love about this Buffalo team with Brian Daboll coming back to call plays, some of the transformation we saw in that offense last year, catering to the wide receiver position, is I do have a lot of options to add a Cole Beasley, to add a Gabriel Davis, to add an Emmanuel Sanders. I could add them all if I want to. What you can't do is add them and the Dallas Cowboys, I've learned. Or it might actually be a deterrent from me taking someone like Adam Thielen, who's one of the highest players on my board, but has a week 7 bye. And I know I might put a bunch of week 7 bye wide receivers on my team later on in this draft. So he went right as I said that. James Robinson in the 5th. Thank you, auto draft. Chris Godwin at the 4-8. You are on deck. Chris Carson at the 4-9. So I better make a pick here. So I could also try and get these Cincinnati Bengals, just in the sense where I'm looking at Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd being 3 of the 5 highest players ranked on my board right now. And that's funny. Brendan Ayuk, who was the guy I was going to smash there. I have so much Brendan Ayuk already, though. I might want to take my foot off the pedal anyways. See, the thing here is I don't think T. Higgins makes it back to me. But does that change how much I am interested in Jamar Chase? Not really. And I'm just looking here. Like, I don't really have... Oh, I'm on just wide receivers. So dumb. Because I was thinking a tight end, maybe Kyler Murray, somebody like that. Like, I do like these running backs as well. So 3 running backs there. Would I get Mike Davis, Myles Gaskin, Kareem Hunt in the 6th? Possibly. Kyler Murray, maybe. So I have quarterbacks. That's interesting because I go running back, maybe try and add a quarterback. I'm going to time out, just take Jamar Chase if that's what fate has decided for me, and it has. TJ Hawkinson I like a lot. So I like this range of the draft. And I like that Kyle Pitts hasn't gone yet, because this is, as you can see, not too far off the range that I would start entertaining Kyle Pitts. So I might go very much 0 RB, modified 0 RB with Saquon Barkley, because I would love to get one of my onesie positions here. I said I'm not a fan of early tight end. And what I wanted to see is if any tight ends did kind of go in that range. Usually Kyle Pitts is that culprit. But TJ Hawkinson, Mark Andrews, and Kyle Pitts, I think, are all steals in the 6th round. Not only good values, I think they're steals in the 6th round. Sorry, just making sure it didn't turn on my auto draft there. But I think I really like this range of the draft is what I'm getting at, because Chase Edmonds, Trey Sermon is somebody I can probably get in the late 7th round, who I get in almost every draft. And then just remember, like, you have to keep in mind that it might be the middle of the 8th or early 8th that I have to take Matthew Stafford to force him on this team. Get at me on Twitter too. Like, I know stacking is a pretty polarizing topic in best ball. So if you think I'm forcing these stacks, I would listen to that argument, but I want you to come at me with like, well, you could have done this, this, and this, and you would have ended up with this had you done it, because I don't have time to go back and do that. But I am very interested to see, maybe I am forcing these stacks sometimes, because you really get into that team building mentality when you're doing these, and it's possible that I lose sight of a little bit of value at the same time, or the concept of it entirely. So that guy at the turn did take T. Higgins. But as you could hear, I was kind of working through that thought process as I went. And I love Jamar Chase as my wide receiver 4. As you can see, you start 3 wide receivers. It's a full PPR. When you go modified 0 RB, you basically draft 4 starting wide receivers because you're going to assume that you're operating a wide receiver in your flex spot. Like, I don't even think I said it off the top, but how best ball works is it just auto populates your lineup. So you draft 20 guys. The computer goes in each week, takes your highest scoring players from that group, plugs them into the assigned lineup, which is just your run of the mill lineup. And your highest scoring players end up filling out and giving you your weekly total. And those totals just accumulate after week after week after week. And at the end of the season, most points win. Simple as that. So I definitely would expect the quarterbacks to be going soon here. Oh, Kyler. So you can see I'd really be attacking the back of a tier here with Lamar Jackson and Kyler Murray. And Dak Prescott. So Dak just went. So I'll take Lamar. Not a ton of stacking options that I do with Lamar. I would have actually preferred, like, if I have J.K. Dobbins, Lamar Jackson becomes actually more interesting to me just because, you're getting a monopoly on those rushing touchdowns. But yeah, if I'm stacking the Ravens, like, I like to stack teams. I like to stack situations. The Rams pass catchers, there's few teams producing multiple top 24 wide receivers on a yearly basis. And the Rams are doing it year after year after year with poor quarterback play. They're getting an uptick in quarterback play. That's why I think Robert Woods could actually see his role expand a little bit. Meanwhile, Cooper Kupp recaptures a little bit of the touchdown upside that was gone in recent years with so few touchdowns going to the wide receiver position. I also think the Rams will be more inclined to throw the ball inside the 10-yard line after being basically the most run-heavy team inside the 10-yard line over the last few years. So a lot of upside, I think, with those pass catchers. And what I'm getting at is you want to stack teams and situations that are advantageous. You don't necessarily just want to be stacking guys on same teams. It's not always the best play. You don't want to stack bad teams because you're just building in more room for error in that team. And it's a play that you want to try more in general in GPPs, like big tournaments, building those kind of teams and thinking outside the box and attacking a range of outcome that is not along the beaten path of everybody else. So this is where I would love to start dipping back into the running back position. The tight ends are really off the radar for me. What I'm going to do is 8th round Matthew Stafford, 9th round I want to add Tyler Higbee. So that means that this 7th round pick is very important. Do I want a 5th wide receiver? Do I want a 2nd running back? Knowing that I can't take a running back or wide receiver again until the 10th round. So that is very important. It's also going to be where I'm, jumping right back into quarterback and tight end to fill out those onesie positions. So getting into the 7th round here, I'm usually taking like a big value play, like whoever I really like, because I was mentioning how much I like this range of the draft, that 5th, 6th, 7th round, which is ironic because we haven't always been able to say that. Sometimes that's where the draft gets kind of ugly, but with all these wide receivers, with the new influx of running backs after the 2020 season, I just think we have a lot of appealing skill position players. And you can see that fantasy drafts in general are just deeper this year. And maybe that's a little bit of a byproduct of coming off of the highest scoring season in NFL history last year. But I can't believe Mike Davis and Myles Gaskin are there in the 7th. Somebody got beaked for taking Nick Chubb in the chat. And there's no doubt 4th overall was rich. Myles Gaskin, finally. So yeah, I guess I could be going through some of these values here. There was some interesting ones that I missed too. So the DJs at the turn, I like that. DJ Moore, DJ Chark, who is really starting to move up boards. I've heard Evan Silva talking him up over at Establish the Run as well. Patrick Mahomes at the 410 is obviously a nice value there. And then Tyler, that's a steal. Adam Thielen in the 5th seems like a steal. I think, like, how much faith do you have in that Minnesota passing game? Like, I don't know. I have a tough time with Kirk Cousins with Adam Thielen. Like, how much more does Justin Jefferson assume command in that wide receiver room as like the face of that passing game? But how much do they use that passing game this year after last year was kind of a confluence of events with a really bad defense, a really bad team, and everybody else in their division other than the Lions kind of just doing better than the Vikings. Like the Vikings were a surprise, terrible team last year. And if you look at Vegas win totals, they're projected to be a much better team this year. So Javonte Williams at the 5.5 went before Travis Etienne. I'm not sure why Travis Etienne is all the way down in the 5th round. I have him much higher. I have a lot of exposure to Travis Etienne because I see him as like Alvin Kamara light. I see him as a guy who can score touchdowns. I can see him as a guy, putting up those big spiked weeks on one play because of his explosivity. There's a lot of ways Travis Etienne is going to pay off a 5th round pick. And 1st round running backs are usually players we are targeting. So I would love to get Mike Davis here. And if not, I might pivot to the wide receiver position. The interesting thing here is I have Justin Herbert on my board. And that is definitely a big tier break for me when it comes to Justin Herbert. Having said that, I have Lamar Jackson. My plan here is to just add Matthew Stafford to this team next round. But do I think Justin Herbert can give me like literally 5 more spiked weeks than Matthew Stafford? I don't know. I am definitely rising on Matthew Stafford after my conversation with Scott Barrett on the program, who brought up somebody who is familiar with the situation, really, really talking up Matthew Stafford. So Mike Davis will be my pick. Another share in the books. And then, yeah, so right here, I'll be focusing on, like, I'm going to take Dallas Goedert just because he is a huge teardrop. He's the one tight end that I am very interested in this range of the draft. Noah Fant, I love in a vacuum. I think he's one of my favorite talents, but I just worry about him in that offense. I think that offense has a lot of concerns right now. Pending Aaron Rodgers. And I do have some, like, I might be overexposed to Noah Fant, so that gets into the diversifying thing. Like, I might just, I've taken my foot off the pedal with Noah Fant a little bit. And it seems like he has moved up. Like, early on in the offseason, you're getting him in the 9th round, I'll say. So this is where I have Matthew Stafford ranked right now, but where I want to take him all of a sudden is ahead of Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers, I have like 0 exposure to. I just have him ranked there so I don't get yelled at. But I am not drafting Aaron Rodgers. And I'll be interested to see because, like, he's not ultra expensive. As you can see, his ADP is 81 overall. So it's like in the 8th round is usually where you'll see Aaron Rodgers go. I think he'll go any second. I can't stomach it. And I think he's actually going to rise even further once we get into once we get into draft season and get some of the hype building behind him. So I took Jamar Chase right after Brendan Ayuk. Kareem Hunt at the 5.9 is a steal. Kareem Hunt's a nice best ball pick because you're getting some of that standalone value. But if Nick Chubb was to get hurt, you have a potential league winner, a potential best ball league winner on your hands with Kareem Hunt. And that's why I have him in that range. But getting Mike Davis, like, would you want Kareem Hunt in the 5th or Mike Davis in the 7th? I'll still take Mike Davis in the 7th, even though I have him in the same tier. Juju Smith-Schuster, not touching him in the 5th round. Mark Andrews, I don't mind Mark Andrews at 5'11 at all. Mark Andrews and TJ Hawkinson are players that I have ranked ahead of Kyle Pitts. So I love the sanity, the sobriety in this draft is very refreshing because I haven't seen Kyle Pitts not go ahead of those two very often. And I saw PFF rank tight ends, and I love PFF. I'm a big PFF proponent, but ranking Kyle Pitts ahead of him with no data behind it is fucked. Like TJ Hawkins and Mark Andrews have spectacular data behind them, whether you want to call Mark Andrews more of a receiving tight end, whether you want to call TJ Hawkins in a good blocker, good this and this and this, they are better than Kyle Pitts right this second. That's not an argument. You don't have data on Kyle Pitts, Mr. PFF, who needs data. Like they're always whining about rookies. They were part of the community who really pushed rookie running backs down in the fantasy community just because of how PFF treats them. So it's amazing to me that they're willing to put a rookie tight end, which comes with an even bigger incubation period. Actually, like just running backs have no incubation period. It's the easiest fuck position to assimilate. And then you have tight ends, which is the hardest by far. And yeah, Kyle Pitts is a unicorn. I love Kyle Pitts. I have this rookie tight end ranked as my tight end 6 in redraft, but having him ahead of those guys in real life football seems crazy to me. Chase Claypool at the 6'11 seems crazy to me. Leonard Fournette at the 6'12 seems crazy to me because I just wouldn't take him at the 6'12. I think people are, not giving the credit that's due to Gio Bernard, who could have signed with the Seahawks. He could have signed with a few different locations, but he chose to go to Tampa Bay. And we know Bruce Arians likes his veteran backs.
You are up.
Jerry Jeudy at the 7-1 seems a little bit early to me, actually. It's so that's before Cortland Sutton. I don't know how many times you'll see that. That is very strange. The one thing I'm interested to see is Jerry Jeudy just back in the slot? He was outside because of Cortland Sutton's injury last year. So that's an interesting thing to monitor during training camp. So I am going to have to get back in the swing here really quick. So Marquise Brown would have been somebody I would have been tethering to Lamar Jackson. Evan Silva on Established the Run was talking about Marquise Brown possibly leading the Ravens in targets. I heard Hayden Winks on the Locked On Ravens podcast mention that he thinks Rashod Bateman will lead the team in targets. And I personally think Mark Andrews could lead the team in targets. Does anybody in Baltimore see 100 targets? I don't know. That's a tough ask, and that is depressing. And so is the wide receiver stats in Baltimore. And I don't think just because they brought in Rashod Bateman, because they've made a little bit of a emphasis, like they place some emphasis on the passing game and everything, just like we're hearing Lamar and we want to get the running backs more involved in the passing game. These are things you'll hear, but when the chips are on the table, that's just not the way it's going to go. Not with Greg Roman. Cortland Sutton at the 7-4, that's the value there, right? Like Noah Fant in the 8th, Cortland Sutton in the 7th, or Jerry Jeudy in the 7th. Give me Cortland Sutton in the 7th. Deebo Samuel in the 7th, a little bit early, but I do see where people are coming from on that one. Tyler Boyd, I love in the middle of the 6th round. That is insane. Just because that offensive line is going to be so bad in Cincinnati, it's quite possible that it's so bad that Joe Burrow needs to get rid of the ball a little bit quicker, and getting rid of the ball really quick might benefit the guy who's closest to the line of scrimmage, and Tyler Boyd operates closer to the line of scrimmage. The one thing we want to monitor is how much are they throwing my boy Jamar Chase in the slot, because he can be very much dominant from the slot. Mike Davis, AJ Dillon, Dallas Goedert. So I did take Mike Davis over Dallas Goedert. Yeah. AJ Dillon, Justin Herbert's a good value there. So that guy got 2 good values. Justin Herbert, Brandon Cooks in the 8th round. Will Fuller and Trey Sermon. I like it. I wanted Trey Sermon. I have Trey Sermon in almost every draft. And if you're getting him in the 8th round, it's ridiculous. Elite offensive line, Kyle Shanahan prioritized this guy, which he's never done with a running back in San Francisco like he has with Trey Sermon in the 3rd round. This guy's going from Ohio State and outside zone scheme into the dominant, the outside zone scheme the rest of the league is trying to replicate for the last decade with Kyle Shanahan. What else? Easiest strength of schedule in all of football, even if Trey Sermon isn't hitting the ground running. Raheem Mostert just doesn't have the ability to hold up to a big workload. If somebody can emerge from that 49ers backfield, it is most certainly Trey Sermon. I don't know what I'm doing here. That's right, HIGBEE. Good job, Tyrell. So I almost forgot. I did want to take Tyler HIGBEE here. He is going earlier and earlier as we see. He is the 5th guy in ADP, I guess. Hunter Henry is definitely lower than that now post Patriots. So yeah, the one guy that I would never take in that range who's going ahead of him is Irv Smith. If you look at 5+ catch games in Minnesota last year, nobody except So Dalvin Cook had like 5. I think Justin Jefferson had like 7, 8, or 9. And then Adam Thielen had 7, 8, or 9. These are games with 5+ catches for the Vikings. Nobody else had more than 1. And that includes Irv Smith, and Tyler Conklin's on that list as well. So I just don't see the volume being there. And I see the passing volume, if anything, in Minnesota going down next year. Although I do admit that Irv Smith was also a guy I had lower in my rankings because I assumed Minnesota might add in the draft to that pass catching room, but they did not. I did think the Vikings hit the draft pretty much out of the park. Devontae Smith at the 8-4. Brandon Cooks and Devontae Smith, these are both guys that I need to start accumulating more shares of. David Johnson in the 8th. I mean, Tank Nation in Houston. I thought David Johnson was a good value in the 8th and 9th like a month ago, and now I just don't anymore. Like, I even put that in our group chat a while ago. Like, David Johnson, everyone hates his guts, obviously. And I'm like, well, what about in the 10th? Because he is literally going in the 10th round, multiple drafts I've been in recent months. Damian Harris at the 8-6, I think, is a fine value. Just need to make sure you're building in pass catching around him. I also think Damian Harris, a lot of this comes down to if Cam Newton is the starting quarterback all season, Damian Harris is not going to pay off his ADP. If Mac Jones is the starting quarterback for 6, 8, 10 games, Damian Harris is going to give you a lot of spiked weeks. Other than that, you're really relying on big plays because I don't even think he's going to give you much touchdown upside. He sure as fuck didn't last year. Ronald Jones, auto pick. And Noah Fant, middle of the 8th. Logan Thomas, 8-10. I don't get the Logan Thomas love. Gronk, I think, is like 1 year older than Logan Thomas. Like, Logan Thomas is quietly, Barnkowski reincarnated. He's just, he might be a one-hit wonder. And the way he did it is through athleticism, which is, it's awesome, but he's old. So he could lose a step any day. Michael Carter at the 8-9. Glad I have a ton of shares. 4th round draft capital, lower than I thought he would go in the NFL draft. Also lower than we thought the Jets would dip their toe into the running back pool. So Michael Carter kind of double draft capital hit. In my books, I also, he was probably my highest owned player in all of best ball before the NFL draft. Raheem Mostert at the 8-11. That is the latest you're going to see him. I'm not sure if there is recent news on him or something, but it's amazing how many sharp analysts are on him because I really don't love him, but it's an interesting one. James Conner at the 9-5, I think, is a good pick. Michael Gallup in the 9th round, I like. Aaron Rodgers and Laviska Shenault, I do not like that turn. Raheem Mostert and Jarvis Landry. So that's an auto drafter. Ryan Tannehill at the 9-4. That's the other one we're going to see. So I thought Ryan Tannehill might actually crop up closer to where I took Stafford, and we'll see where Tom Brady goes. But, I had those guys all in a pretty similar tier, but I really am separating Stafford from the group and even separating Tannehill a little bit from the group. But what we just saw from Tom Brady was in the first season in Arians' system. We know the second season in Arians' system is often better because it is a tough, difficult system to acclimate to. And we know they both kind of went through an acclimation period last year, both Brady and Arians. And so could he even, I don't care about age at this point. I care more about Matt Ryan's age. I care more about Aaron Rodgers' age than I do Tom Brady's age at this point. Not to mention if I can get him in the 10th round, all the better with Tom Brady because he also has one of the best late season strength of schedules for GPPs, for Scott Fishbowl. Always keep that in mind. What the fuck? So Jalen Hurts at the 9-11, that is way too late. Who took Devontae Smith? That guy fucked up. Where's Devontae Smith? What am I doing? So Devontae Smith, so he had Dak, so I can see where he's coming from. He did the rushing stack, you can see there.
You are on deck.
But I think it's wild. Like, if I can get Jalen Hurts in the 9th round, I definitely I don't know if I want to be stacking Matthew Stafford. So I'm looking at Gus Edwards because I have 2 running backs. Saquon Barkley definitely adds in the passing game. So I think I have the running backs in place or the running back in place to allow me to add high upside guys, to add guys who might not offer much in the pass catching department. But at the same time, I am not on my ranks, by the way, there. I was on ADP. But at the same time, this is who I was looking at. Was Cole Beasley is somebody I know I would have to take right around now if I want him on my team. The thing is, I have, 4 pretty strong wide receivers. But having said that, I do love to leave the 10th round having picked half wide receivers at that point. But looking at it, I have Jalen Waddle, I have Corey Davis, Devontae Parker. I kind of think I might be able to land Cole Beasley in the 11th round, in which case I'm picking between Gus Edwards and Tony Pollard. I think this is a bit of a safety versus upside debate, right? Like Gus Edwards, we know, is going to get a lot more touches than Tony Pollard, but Tony Pollard could obviously really explode if Zeke was to get hurt, or even if he was to offer some standalone value in that offense in Dallas, the way Kellen Moore calls plays. I think he could really give you a handful of spiked weeks in standalone fashion. But as you can see, the computer auto-drafted me Gus Edwards, which I'm fine with. I like Gus Edwards quite a bit. I think his touch volume is being totally dismissed right now. If you look at how many running back touches were in Baltimore last year, J.K. Dobbins ain't touching the ball 350 to 400 times, right? So Gus Edwards is going to see a hefty share of touches. And honestly, if J.K. Dobbins, if they want him to be the third down back, I think that's very interesting. I think whoever comes in as well, because we did hear the Ravens had brought in Todd Gurley for a visit. We should mention that he's a hometown boy, and he didn't leave with a contract. So I don't really see that happening, but we need to keep that in mind that Baltimore is in the market for a running back, possibly off of the scrap heap, which I mentioned before the NFL draft. Like last year, I called the J.K. Dobbins pick. Well, I called Baltimore adding a running back in the top 3 rounds. Just because losing Mark Ingram this offseason, like Baltimore is one of the rare teams who want 4 running backs that they can rely on, or at least 4 running backs who can contribute. Not unlike Green Bay, and we're seeing with a lot of these teams who are very run heavy, and that's like what we would call Baltimore, right? Is like super ultra exotic smash mouth offense, right? So I definitely think they will add a running back, but I don't think that guy would hurt Gus Edwards very much. I don't think Gus Edwards is the goal line back, though. I think that's one thing that people are hoping, but I'm not sure. I'm not saying he's going to get 0 goal line touches. I'm just saying that J.K. Dobbins will be the goal line back if I was the head coach because of his ability to make guys miss. Curtis Samuel at the 9-6. So Michael Pittman in the middle of the 9th round, I love. I mean, that guy can really have a monopoly on the Colts passing game. There is not a lot going on there outside of T.Y. Hilton and a bunch of guys that we are taking leaps of faith with, including Michael Pittman, I guess. Jalen Hurts at the 9-11. I just can't get over that. So you see that quarterback run there with Tom Brady at the 9-12, Joe Burrow at the 10-1. So that guy just went quarterback. Naeem Hines, Antonio Brown at the 10-3. Don't mind that pick. Irv Smith at the 10-4. Like, I cannot believe how high this guy is going. Mike Gesicki. I think people don't realize that Miami drafted a tight end in the 3rd round this year, Hunter Long, who is kind of a do-it-all tight end. So I'll be interested to see because Mike Gesicki, it felt like he really was about to take that step last year. He was really ascending. So I'm interested to follow him this year. Marvin Jones, I don't mind that pick. Jamal Williams, I do not like that pick. Mike Williams is interesting heading into a contract year. Marvin Jones, I was a lot higher on. I had him ranked in like the 10th roundish. You see him go in the 11th or 12th usually. I've kind of moved him down a little bit after Trevor Lawrence's props came out. So when you look at Vegas, he's projected to break some records basically when it comes to passing yards and having a 17th game added to the schedule. But his touchdown totals, very sobering, under 25 touchdowns he is projected for. Yeah, Marvin Jones might see a pretty significant portion of those, but I still think he is going to be boomer bust touchdown dependent guy. Cole Beasley. Should I do it now or should I go back in on quarterback or tight end? Oh no, I don't need quarterback. What am I doing? So Evan Engram, that's right. So I did have a little bit of a tier break here, and I was thinking about Evan Engram just in the sense where I have SAQUON Barkley on my team. Because you can add as many pieces from this New York Giants football team as you like, but I need to make sure his bye week is not week 11. But Cole Beasley. So should I do the Bills build, or should I shore up and attack this, which I deem... Oh. So Evan Ingram's the pick, and I do just see it as a teardrop. I think Jonnu Smith and Rob Gronkowski are guys that I do like in this range as well, but they're guys that I'm taking more in the 12th and 13th round, and I can get in the 12th or 13th round. Evan Ingram is usually gone by this point, and like I said, just having Saquon Barkley on my team. So Kadarius Toney exists. I admit that, but I think with Jason Garrett, with being bottom of the league in terms of pre-snap motion, play action, all these creative things that would utilize a Kadarius Toney perfectly, they don't exist in New York, and Jason Garrett doesn't even know what the fuck they are. So I think Evan Ingram and Saquon Barkley are the two dynamic electric weapons in that Giants offense who are also operating very close to Daniel Jones should that horrible pass protection break down. Because that is just the two biggest concerns in New York, and they're so fucking glaring, is the offensive line and the play calling from Jason Garrett. So if I can combat that, if there's a way to take advantage of that, or how I feel about that, I think Saquon Barkley and Evan Ingram are the answers. Unfortunately, I think Sterling Shepard might be the answer too, depending on if he's a slot guy or not. But I definitely, these are formations we want to see, and I do worry about Kadarius Toney's snap rate as a rookie, and their ability to get him involved in the game plan. And like I said, it leaves me open to adding like a Darius Slayton and Sterling Shepard later to this team, or Kadarius Toney if I wanted to. But I think Kadarius Toney operates in too much of a similar fashion to how Evan Ingram operates that I'm going to try and not bet on multiple ranges of outcomes. Like basically, I think if Kadarius Toney was to make an impact in year one, in a big way for like in fantasy relevance sense, I think that would have an impact on Evan Ingram in particular. And I think Daniel Jones is going to go a long way. Like I like Daniel Jones. I think this is the year for Daniel Jones. But I think he's also an underrated rusher. So I think I'm a little bit worried about the deep ball setting up and him being able to use his legs successfully because the offensive line, the play calling. So everything that happens in New York keeps coming back to Saquon Barkley. If he stays healthy, is going to, have a blow up season. And Evan Ingram really, it's, we just don't know what's missing. The guy just has bad hands. One year he's just not productive, and all the talent is there, we think. So that's one we're just going to have to keep following, because that one is a little bit frustrating. But with that said, I have now added all my quarterbacks and tight ends if I so choose. I do not have to go back in on the 1Z positions for the rest of the draft. I was looking at quarterbacks just because I have Lamar, I have Matthew Stafford, but if Stafford got hurt, if Lamar got hurt, this is a team that I wouldn't mind actually doing a 3 quarterback build. And I know that I added quarterbacks in round 6 and round 8. So that seems pretty early to go back in on a running back, but a quarterback. But I feel like if I added a Justin Fields or a Trey Lance, I would really be almost guaranteeing those 30 points per week from the running back position. But I think I'll wait until round 13 to see if that falls in my lap or something.
You are on deck.
So I don't have a lot that I'm really chomping at the bit, like running up to the podium to get. I think Russell Gage and Gabriel Davis would be the guys that I would be. Yeah, so I only have 4 wide receivers. Gabriel Davis, I really, really, really like this year. I think him and Emmanuel Sanders, it's trippy, man. I love all 4 of the wide receivers for Buffalo, because I all think they bring something individualistic from that thing. And Brian Dable just really opened up that passing game last year. Like we saw Buffalo running a bunch of 4 wide receiver sets, and they had 3 wide receivers on the field, just a ton, and the wide receiver market share was top 5 in the NFL. And we know that the air yards, the deep balls, the touchdowns were all there from Josh Allen last year. So let's go back here a little bit. We were at, Tony Pollard range, which I like at the end of the 10th. And then Mike Williams, Trevor Lawrence at the end of the 11th. So Daniel Jones in the 11th round is an auto pick. That's strange. Tevin Coleman in the 11th round. That is early. I have Tevin Coleman as a couple last round picks just because I did envision this, him going a lot higher. And maybe if we look, so that's a 3rd pick. And he doesn't. I thought maybe this was the dude who drafted Michael Carter by chance, and it is not. But yeah, Tevin Coleman, I have such little faith in as a football player at this point of his career, that I would prefer Ty Johnson in a vacuum if I was an NFL GM, and I 100% mean that. Tevin Coleman, for some reason, though, has leverage. He is 100% an extortionist. There's no doubt. How he kept his job so long with Shanahan, how he was gifted that job originally when entering San Francisco was crazy to me. And I worry the same thing might happen with the San Francisco offshoot staff in Robert Saleh and Minnie LaFleur. So Tevin Coleman isn't the worst bet to be the lead back to start the season for the Jets. I just don't think he's the best bet to be their lead back at the end of the season or to succeed behind that offensive line. And I just hate Tevin Coleman. But I do have some shares if you can get him at the last couple of rounds of your draft. Darnell Mooney, 11th round. Love Darnell Mooney. Darrell Henderson, 11th round. We love Darrell Henderson. Jalen Waddle at the end of the 11th. I have him much higher than that. I guess I have to move him down. I just don't know what to do. Like, how pass heavy will Miami be is the question. We know Miami has arguably a top 5 defense in the entire NFL. They play in a very tough division, and they have a pretty difficult strength of schedule. But they might want to run the ball just because the Patriot way and the strong defense and the controlling of the clock and everything. And Tua not having shown us that he can really let it sling yet. He wasn't able to put that on display last year. So we obviously need Tua to take a pretty big step. But if he was to do that, and we have seen top 10 quarterbacks heading into their sophomore season do exactly that on massive scales. We just saw Josh Allen do it going into his 3rd year. But what I'm saying is Jalen Waddle will really pay off his ADP if that's the case. Really pay off his ADP. I think Jalen Waddle can do it all. He can play all 3 wide receiver positions in that offense. I'm not sure that's true with either of the other guys in Will Fuller or Devontae Parker, Mike Gesicki as well. So I think Jalen Waddle just kind of hurts everybody, and he's the guy that we know already has that built-in relationship, that rapport, that chemistry going back to Alabama with Tua Tagovailoa. So, man, Jalen Waddle is very, very interesting to me if you can get him in the 11th round. That is crazy. Corey, I love all these picks here. Corey Davis is a great pick at the end of the 11th. Cole Beasley, great pick at the end of the 11th. Elijah Moore, let's go. Don't like seeing him going in the 11th because I love Elijah Moore. But it's nice that the buzz is building. So Gus Edwards or Russell Gage is the guy who is jumping off the page to me. One of my highest ranked guys, Rashad Penny. Because I definitely need to add some running backs. And what I was thinking about is Rashad Bateman, just because I do have Lamar Jackson, of course, and I mentioned Hayden Winks. So let's do that. Let's take Rashad Bateman, because Russell Gage, I just don't see the upside. How much high leverage? Like, Russell Gage could actually deliver a volume-driven wide receiver 3 season. There's no doubt. He's going as like a wide receiver 5. Or that's what I have him ranked at, as a wide receiver 5, like just outside my top 50 wide receivers for Russell Gage. But my point is that he will be operating close to the line of scrimmage. He'll be kind of that dump off option if it's not Mike Davis. And yeah, I just don't think Russell Gage is going to see the end zone targets. I don't think he's going to see the deep targets. That's for sure. We almost know he won't. So I'm not sure that somebody like Olamide Zaccheaus or whatever doesn't plug into your lineup more just because he goes off for 4 deep ball touchdowns in 16 games, 17 games. Whereas Russell Gage is scoring like 8 to 14 PPR points every week, but he's not plugging into your lineup because those aren't spiked weeks, and you're going to get 8 to 12 points from multiple wide receivers in your best ball roster on a weekly basis. So I went with Rashad Bateman just because I believe in the touchdown upside a little bit more on his end. In fact, what Rashad Bateman does is go in and affect everybody around him. Like, he's going to provide Lamar Jackson with a second weapon in between the 20s that isn't named Marquise Brown. He's going to add another weapon inside the 20s in the red zone that isn't named Mark Andrews. So Rashad Bateman has upside to see some deep targets, some play action, deep balls. And I think he could lead this team in end zone targets, if not overall target share in Baltimore in 2021, not unlike Hayden Winks laid out on the Ravens Locked On podcast. Hayden Winks, by the way, of Underdog Fantasy, cat out of the bag. I am having him on the program next week, and I am ecstatic. I really am a big fan of his, going back to his Roto World days or NBC Sports or whatever the fuck ever. Los Angeles Rams defense, 13-2, auto pick. Thank you. Denzel Mims at the 12-2. I know people are really high on Denzel Mims, but I love seeing my boy Elijah Moore. If you go back, I've had Elijah Moore ranked ahead of Denzel Mims all offseason. I think it's interesting. Some people are really high on Denzel Mims. I am really high on Denzel Mims. The problem is Corey Davis is going to play the X, and we think Elijah Moore, if not Jameson Crowder, is going to play in the slot. So, Mims is kind of relegated to playing that second outside wide receiver position, and I'm not sure if he always will be that second wide receiver in 2 wide receiver packages ahead of Elijah Moore as soon as his electricity and athleticism is put on display. So I just worry Denzel Mims is going to be victim to some of the same circumstances he was last year, mainly having a hard time getting on the field consistently. And staying healthy is another thing that Denzel Mims has to do. And he could score a touchdown. He didn't do that last year either. But we know Gase, we know the Wicked Witch is dead, so we'll see. It was actually kind of amazing. Like, this kind of anecdotal, I'd have to look it up, but it felt like Denzel Mims would get like 3 targets, 2 catches, 60 yards in the first half, and then he just disappeared.
You are up.
So what you'll see in these live drafts is a bit of a lag. So you'll see that I could take Russell Gage here, so 2, 4, 6. So this might be my last wide receiver if I wanted to. I'm probably going to do an 8 wide receiver build on this team just because I want my wide receivers to be a potent group in this draft. So yeah, I'm going to take Russell Gage. And what I was going to say is that in these live drafts, sometimes doing your own customized rankings goes such a long way because there is a bit of a lag here where, guys aren't necessarily up to date on the news. Like, we know Russell Gage was the wide receiver who's going to experience like a meteoric ascent in average draft position once Julio Jones was traded, because he becomes that wide receiver 2 in the offense, if not the wide receiver 1. If Calvin Ridley, like, just really quick on that, like, he went under the knife, we think he's fine, but say he wasn't there at training camp, say he's not at the start of training camp, maybe we would ask if that foot injury that Calvin Ridley went under the knife for was a little more serious than they're letting on. But for the time being, Calvin Ridley firmly entrenched for 150 targets probably. But Russell Gage is definitely that guy who could fall into that 100 target category. But what I worry about is like your Larry Fitzgerald, your Christian Kirk from 2 years ago, that, those guys who get 100 targets and still don't finish as top 36 wide receivers. Only 2 or 3 a year do it. But D.D. Westbrook, there's guys who have done it in recent years, and that's exactly what I worry about with Russell Gage. And even if a wide receiver 39 pays off when you're drafting him as your wide receiver 54, it ain't like that in best ball. You need this guy scoring 15 points to 20 points to plug into your lineup. You're not getting that guy plugging into your lineup over a Gabriel Davis, even if he's just scoring 12 points a week. And even if he is, you're not helping yourself by just getting 12 points out of your wide receiver 3. You want, a handful of wide receivers scoring those 15-point weeks on you. So that's where guys like T.Y. Hilton come into the mix. That's where guys like Henry Ruggs comes into the mix. That's why these guys get littered into the back of wide receiver rooms, where I've kind of went the other way, where I added in maybe someone like Jamar Chase, who maybe he doesn't see 120 targets right away. Gabriel Davis, who definitely won't see 100 targets, but he will be used on mismatches and things like that. And that is definitely, like, if I was to add another wide receiver, I know exactly who it would be. It'd be Deshaun Jackson to go with my Robert Woods, Cooper Kupp, Matt Stafford, Tyler HIGBEE build. But, you definitely have to weigh that. Like, I already have the 4 best players in that offense that aren't running backs, right? So if the Rams are a little more pass heavy than, one of the run heaviest teams, which they have been in recent years, I think this team is looking pretty good. Especially when you have Saquon Barkley and you're assuming he pays off. And I know my running backs are very thin, but I'm planning to be so strong with Lamar. Like, Lamar was a big concession I made there, just knowing that I am very confident in my quarterbacks now. And I actually am going to add Trey Lance if he's there in the 16th, because that's fucked. I'll go off on him if he gets there. So Derek Carr at the 14-4. Never take Derek Carr. Never take Phillip Rivers. Never take Derek Carr. These guys, you know exactly where you're going to get from. It's exactly the conversation I'm having with Russell Gage, where you don't want your quarterback 2 to be a player you know exactly what you're going to get from. And what you're going to get from them is 15 to 20 point weeks. You're not getting the 25 to 30 point weeks. You think of somebody like Daniel Jones, who, yeah, he hasn't scored very well, but when he is plugging into your lineup, he's putting up those big weeks, especially 2 years ago. So I just do not see the appeal for Derek Carr. I think a better process would be literally where you take Derek Carr, take Jameis Winston, and then take Taysom Hill, your next pick. Like, if you feel like you're wasting one of those picks, you just wasted it on Derek Carr. I'm telling you, you wasted that pick. Phillip Rivers, wasted pick year after year after year. It's what I call playing for second place, right? It's what people refer to as playing for second place, even though you're really playing for 10th place. Because the thing is, Phillip Rivers would always pay off. You would draft him as the QB 15 to 20, and he would give you quarterback 10 to 14 numbers, and people would be like, look, I won that pick. That pick paid off, but it didn't. So I'm going to take Trey Lance, and the reason is multifaceted. The 49ers, I kind of went into detail about with Trey Sermon, just that elite offensive line, the scheme that we want to be tethered to. The play action is just off the charts in San Francisco. What hasn't been, just what's been non-existent is a vertical element to the passing game. Their deep passing, the air yards, the deep ball targets have not been there in San Francisco under Garoppolo, Mullins, whoever. So with Trey Lance coming in, that's what he brings on top of the athleticism, the ability to extend plays, and the ability to implement run-pass options into your offense, which builds in even more efficiency into that already ultra-efficient run game that's running that outside zone that everybody's trying to copy. So you plug in, you inject Trey Lance into that offense, and it just becomes all the more dangerous, all the more unstoppable. Not to mention his 3 passing weapons can all do it themselves. He doesn't have to throw it deep if he doesn't want to, because George Kittle is the best tight end we've probably ever seen in the history of the game after the catch. Brendan Ayuk is elite after the catch. If Deebo Samuel is nothing else, he's very good after the catch. So these guys, they're free money. And furthermore, I think he's starting soon. Top 10 picks start soon. The only ones who haven't in the last decade, Jake Locker, Pat Mahomes because of Alex Smith, and Jared Goff, funny enough, only started 7 or 8 games in his rookie year. Other than that, these rookie top 10 quarterbacks play over 12 games per season on average, and it's just those 3 guys who played under 8 games that I mentioned. So these guys play right away. And why not play Trey Lance right away if you're San Francisco? Because he offers so much more to this offense. He adds so many additional elements to the game plan, to a defensive game plan who's facing San Francisco. And they have the easiest strength of schedule in all of football in any possible way you want to break down strength of schedule. And very easy to start the season. So there's no reason to let him try and get his feet wet. We also heard Jet York, the general manager, say that he would be confident in Trey Lance starting right away. The coaching staff has really been enamored with him through camp. And obviously the confidence they showed by going up to 3 to draft the small sample quarterback was eye-opening, if you will. So, and they also have the earliest bye week in all of football, week 6 or 7 or whatever. The earliest bye weeks are in this day and age with 17 games. So I love Trey Lance. We actually talked about that. Scott Barrett on the program last night said he was also Team Lance over Team Fields. I'm not sure if I'm that strong-minded when it comes to 2021, but long-term 100%. And if it wasn't for Fields being ultra electrically fast, I think it would be an easy decision because of the situations those two landed in. So I won't get Sterling Shepard. 14th round's too early for me. Actually got to cue some guys up here. So I took Gabriel Davis, correct. So I know I have to be concentrating on running back would be where my eye is gravitating towards right now. But as you can see, the running backs are quite disgusting. There is a team defense that I'm going to take if they're on the board here. And I will explain why. Number 1, defenses are beginning to go off the board. Let's see what ADP has to say. Adam Troutman's a pick I really like in this range, by the way. I think it's crazy you can get him this late. Paris Campbell, somebody I have very little exposure to. Maybe this would be a spot that I should take him. I take him when I take T.Y. Hilton. I take him when I take Michael Pittman sometimes, but yeah, I don't have a lot of exposure to Paris Campbell, who has kind of a truther army, I would describe his Twitter presence as. So yeah, we're getting down to some slim pickings here, and I'm still on ADP. And there's only one wide receiver like Deshaun Jackson I was mentioning, but Emmanuel Sanders makes a lot of sense for this team as well. And I love it. Emmanuel Sanders is just the king. So I am running to the podium to take the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And there's a few reasons. Number one, they scored a ton of points last year. They brought everybody back from last year. This is the second year that everybody's kind of growing together. I totally forget, is it Todd Bowles? But we just saw what that defense was able to do to win the Super Bowl. That Super Bowl was won by the defense in Tampa Bay, shutting down Pat Mahomes and the Chiefs. There is no bones to make about that. And with that said, look at some of the defenses that already went off the board. Like I mentioned, the Rams went off in like the 13th round. The 15th round is my drop down. I will take the Rams and the Buccaneers in the 15th round, and I'll start taking other defenses in the late 16th, early 17th. Bills belong in 17th. I know they were top 10 defense 2 years ago and 3 years ago. And then last year, while their offense just took this meteoric volcanic explosion, their defense actually regressed hard. So I expect a bounce back in that department, but you don't see the Bills going as the third defense very often. The Washington football team is very much a frequent team you'll see going in the 13th, 14th, 15th area. I'm not taking them till late 16th, early 17th. Steelers, same thing. But I cannot believe, like, Tampa Bay is my defense too, and it's not even close, especially in big tournaments because they have that really easy late season strength of schedule. So I think the Buccaneers are almost like a cheat code that you need on GPPs if you have to draft team defenses in a format that you're in. Make sure you're grabbing the Buccaneers. So yeah, you see all these defenses went before. Oh no, so these are all starting to come off the board here now. So some of the other guys, Cole Kmet, decent value in the 15th. Jimmy Graham is still there, and he did dominate end zone targets last year, so we need him to get the fuck out of there. I really, really thought he would be cut. Just the contract, he was very cuttable. Ramondre Stevenson, definitely an interesting name. Terrence Marshall. Brian Edwards, forgot about him. Rondale Moore. Rondale, come back to me. I need you and I love you, baby. Baka, baka, baka. Gerald Everett at the 16-12. He's one of my highest owned tight ends. For a couple of reasons. Like, I like Gerald Everett as that third tight end. I like him when I add Tyler Lockett or Dwayne Eskridge or something. Just trying to grab that third weapon in that Seahawks passing game attached to Russell Wilson, because we know we'll get the spiked weeks from them. We also saw Jimmy Graham. Yeah, we've seen the tight end market share and the tight end touchdown share be very high under Russell Wilson in the past. And I just think Gerald Everett meets a lot of criteria when it comes to roster construction, whether he's your third tight end and the last palatable third tight end, or whether he's the only guy the last guy I'm comfortable with adding to a Travis Kelce build or what have you. So I am certainly having wide receivers jump out at me. I have Gio Bernard, who I was talking up earlier. I have Darrell Williams, JAVIAN Hawkins. Maybe he's interesting because I have SAQUON or Mike Davis on my team. But that's really muddying the line between what is a handcuff and what is not a handcuff. How confident are you in Mike Davis, especially when it comes to his bell cow upside? And would you be banking on JAVIAN being a handcuff, or are you banking on if one of these guys has to be the guy kind of thing? And is Atlanta a running back room you want to leverage in that fashion? So I kind of box myself in there, and I'm done at wide receiver now. So I have 3 Bills in my pass catching room. And it's kind of weird. Like, I don't have a ton of upside built into this wide receiver room like you might see in your typical best ball draft. But how much upside does Stefon Diggs offer? Pretty much unlimited, right? Robert Woods, I think, comes with a little bit more upside than people are giving him credit for. We know how consistent he's been delivering on these seasons, these borderline wide receiver 1 seasons. But I also think we could see some deep targets that just have not been there with Jared Goff. Like the deep targets just went in the crapper last year in the Rams offense. And you think about it, like, yeah, Deshaun Jackson, sure. But Van Jefferson, nope. Cooper Kupp, nope. Tutu Atwell, get the fuck out of here. That guy is running, he's going to be the guy in motion, disguising looks and stuff. He is tailor-made for this offense, but he is not Deshaun Jackson's deep threat replacement. I couldn't disagree with that more. So Robert Woods is the guy who might be going deep on go routes off of play action. So I think Robert Woods is somebody to be very interested in, especially because like Josh Reynolds quietly saw a ton of air yards and even more end zone targets. So I think Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp have a lot of touchdown upside. And I think that's why you're stacking and building these offenses, because Tyler Higbee is there as well. Who knows what happens? What I know is the Rams are going to be a good offense, and I have that entire offense outside of Cam Akers and Darrell Henderson. Because that's the other hope, right? Like that it is a pretty condensed offense. I think we could expect Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods. They're going to fall somewhere in that 20 to 30% target share range, probably both around 25%. And then you're going to see Tyler Higbee getting a significant portion of those targets as well. And then whatever's left is going to Van Jefferson, Deshaun Jackson, and Tutu Atwell. And I think that they are splitting about as much as some of these other guys might get on their own. So defense is definitely what I got to be keyed in on. And then I'm just strictly going a couple more running backs, maybe 3 more running backs. Like so I'm 18, 19, 20. So yeah, I guess I'm just going to do a 2 quarterback build because I did an 8 wide receiver build. Yes. So Todd Gurley, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Adam Troutman. See, I think the 49ers are a really good defense draft this year because of that strength of schedule, that late season strength of schedule for GPPs. So yeah, these are picks that I'm just not super interested in. Philip Lindsay, not a great pass catcher, playing for probably inarguably the worst team in football. Do you want that running back or the second running back in that offense? I do not. Todd Gurley, I don't know what to think about Todd Gurley. You can look up one of my first articles I ever wrote. I took a really hot take on Todd Gurley and said, get rid of this guy. As soon as his arthritic knee component came out, that information was leaked after the playoffs. I wrote an article comparing Todd Gurley to Terrell Davis, a former Georgia running back. It was a really fun article to read, and you could probably just Google a comparative study, Todd Gurley, and you'll find it. But yeah, it's played out pretty much how I thought it would. If not, Todd Gurley actually scored more touchdowns. So, good for him. And that's why we did not want him to go to Baltimore. And that's why it was pretty fucking obvious that it wasn't a choice of his to make, because he obviously would have chosen Baltimore over Detroit, who would have offered about 4 times as many goal line carries to him. Marlon Mack in the 17-7. I really like that pick in the 17th round. New England, good DST to pick. The New Orleans Saints are the DST to avoid, I think, right now, just because there are a lot of moving pieces in that on that defense. And I really need the Browns here. Come on, guys. If I can get the Brownies.
You are up.
No. So that sucks because I really don't love these defenses, and taking them in the 18th is even more frustrating, but it is a teardrop for me. I think the Broncos and the Packers are the teams to target here. I get it with the Chargers. I get it. But sue me. I really try hard to not fall victim to this. These people have fucked me before. I'm never drafting them again. That is just not a rule to live by. But the Chargers defense is that. Look at this, guys. Look at this. So last year, the Chargers, that was their year, right? They were supposed to have a great year on defense. Another defensive year, they were great. And they scored barely 100 fantasy points on defense. They barely scored more points than the Atlanta Falcons last year. And this is a reoccurring theme. Doesn't matter how great their secondary's been. Doesn't matter. The Chargers are going Charger. And I will say this. Brendan Staley sounds smart. That guy being interviewed is very articulate. He is very good. He got the what do you do? Like he seems like he has a good grasp on analytics. There's a lot to like about this young man, Staley, taking the job. Except who he hired at offensive coordinator, except when you consider that could have been Eric Bieniemy or Brian Dable or Joe Brady or one of these offensive minds coming in to work with Justin Herbert in this offense. Instead, it's Brendan Staley who hired a failed politician, Lombardi, to run the offense. So I really don't know what to think with this Chargers team. But what I'm not ready to do is tell people that they're a top 10 defense on paper and expect it to play out, because I'm done doing that. Speaking of done doing that, Matt Breida. So, I'm only going to be taking a couple more running backs in this draft, and it's getting a little stale here. What am I at for time? So I'm already close to 1 hour and a half. So maybe I'll just start running down my team and GTFO. Because, and also, I want people to let me know what they prefer. So let's try it like this. I'm going to share my other screen and see if you guys prefer the draft board in the future. So I want to share screen. Oh, that is not the one. There we go. Yeah, so that would be the other option. I could show you just the full draft chart that, has all the picks on there as they come off. So let me know what you would prefer. But this way you can't see my team. You can't see who's kind of coming up on the list on the left there for my picks, for my rankings. And I don't know, you just don't see the queue. You don't see the process as much, I think. So I didn't know if this would be as helpful for somebody who hasn't played in a best ball tournament before. So feel free to let me know in the future and I will accommodate. So I'm going to take Giovanni Bernard. And that's because, like I said earlier, I expect him to see some pass catching. And if Leonard Fournette was to get injured, if Ronald Jones was to get injured, I do think he would have a bigger workload for Giovanni Bernard. And as much as you might think Keyshawn Vaughn is a better running back than Gio Bernard, if you think Ronald Jones is a super superior running back to Gio Bernard, you would also share a sentiment with me there. However, Bruce Arians doesn't necessarily think the way we do. It's the assumption of rational coaching, and he loves his veteran running backs. Just look at Shady McCoy last year, getting touches late in the season. So Giovanni Bernard as my running back 4 doesn't have to plug into my lineup very often. But I think he's kind of a perfect back where I do expect him to see some pass catching. So I think he has like this little bit of a floor, at least for like 5 to 10 to 15 games. He'll have a bit of a floor. And then I also might get to capture the ceiling. And we know that 6 catches for 70 yards plugs into your lineup at the running back position. And I think he has a couple of those games in his range of outcomes. And we also saw Tampa Bay much more willing to attack a game plan as opposed to Bruce Arians, who's always just kind of like throwing the ball downfield, shoved his system down everyone's throat, whether it's players on his own team or opposing defenses. And I think we saw a little bit of that recoil last season in Tampa Bay. So 2-4, I could technically do a 4 running back build, but look at how ugly my RB2, 3, and 4 are. Having said that, I'm willing to take Mike Davis in the 5th round, so getting him in the 7th felt like a steal. it's interesting. JAVIAN Hawkins is basically my highest ranked player at this point, but it gets into that conversation. Would I just be handcuffing him to Mike Davis? Is it a STaCk cuff where you expect JAVIAN Hawkins to possibly get some of the standalone value in the receiving game? I kind of see Mike Davis as like a 3-down back. I can't think of any bigger votes of confidence that team could have given him besides signing him, not signing anybody else, not drafting anybody, and just bringing in undrafted free agent JAVIAN Hawkins, who actually, there's a lot of knocks on JAVIAN Hawkins outside of production. We know we love production, and we all thought JAVIAN Hawkins would get drafted, but he did not, and he does have concerns. But like I said, there's, if I was going to handcuff, why wouldn't I handcuff with Devontae Booker, who I think is a way better running back than JAVIAN Hawkins? Like, I think Devontae Booker is a pretty good running back. Speaking of which, Wayne Gallman, if you saw, I threw him in my queue because I want 49ers running backs, and we know the history with Shanahan. Like, I talked up Sermon, but we know, where did Raheem Mostert come from? He's a UDFA out of nowhere, and we've seen that time and again, going back to Alfred Morris, even before that, with Isaiah Crowell in Cleveland. But Shanahan loves his nobody running backs, and he gets production out of those nobody running backs, as did his daddy, for that matter, Mike Shanahan. But there is, like, these are the hardest picks, but running back is usually the pick you're trying to make at the end of your draft. But I do like a lot of these backs, is what I'm saying. Mike Boone, Justin Jackson, who just nobody wants to draft but me. Keyshawn Vaughn, like, would I add a Keyshawn Vaughn? Or Raymond Calais, who is in LA. Like, Raymond Calais is my secret weapon this year, who I've taken a few times late in my drafts, who nobody knows. But I just don't have a good feel for this pick. Jared Dokes. Yeah, and if you see, I have Justin Jackson and then Larry Roundtree down here, Joshua Kelly down here. I think Larry Roundtree takes Joshua Kelly's goal line role for the Chargers. I don't think Austin Eckler gets that workload, unfortunately. I don't think he needs that workload to pay off his ADP either. So it is Wayne Gallman or JAVIAN Hawkins. I'm going to take JAVIAN Hawkins. Let me know what you guys think about that pick, because maybe it's not a make or break pick, but when you look at my roster and I only have Mike Davis, Gus Edwards, and Giovanni Bernard behind SAQUON, is it a good play to tether another back who's in a 8-win, like a team who's projected to be under 500 as well? So let me know all the reasons I shouldn't have drafted JAVIAN Hawkins, but let me know, because these are the tough decisions that can win leagues. It happened with Phillip Lindsay in the past. It happened with Aaron Jones in the past. These are running backs that can win you leagues if you make the right pick. So is Ty Johnson that guy? Who is my secret weapon that I'm onto something with? Is it Salvin Ahmed? Is it Wayne Gallman? Is he the best pass catcher in that 49ers backfield? Let me know on Twitter, because I am going to GTFO here in 1 second. I just want to run down my team. So Lamar Jackson. Actually, what I'll do is I'll switch this back here so you can see my team again. Share. Sharing. Everybody do your share. Okay. Yeah, that's the one. I am kind of an old man when it comes to technology, so my apologies, but this is my team, and I like it. Lamar Jackson, Matthew Stafford, Trey Lance. Should I have added Trey Lance? Hit me up. Lamar Jackson, Matthew Stafford, Trey Lance. Saquon Barkley, Mike Davis, Gus Edwards, Gio, JAVIAN Hawkins. So running backs where I'm light, but Saquon Barkley hits, I'm fine. Saquon Barkley, Mike Davis, Gus Edwards, Giovanni Bernard, JAVIAN Hawkins. I like Mike Davis too. Stephon Diggs, Robert Woods, Cooper Kupp, Jamar Chase, Gabriel Davis, Rashad Bateman, Russell Gage, Emmanuel Sanders. I think I have one of, if not the best wide receiver rooms in this tournament. Don't even need to look at other teams. I just think I have, 3-4 top 24 wide receivers with a collection of guys that I like, who will plug in my lineups and also give me a little bit of stability with Russell Gage there, just in case if Stephon Diggs or somebody was to get hurt. As you can see, I have just 2 tight ends on my team with Tyler Higbee, Evan Engram. So I went a 3 quarterback build with 2 tight ends. I went 5 running backs and 8 wide receivers, even though My running backs were a little bit weaker than my wide receiver, so a lot of people might have chosen a 6 running back build and a 7 wide receiver build. I didn't do that because I feel that's a mistake a lot of people make. I want my strength to be my strength, and if I have something that's a little bit weaker, I can embrace that and build a stronger wide receiver room. Tight ends, I don't think are going to be my X factor in this league, but I do think that I need Tyler Higbee to be a consistent touchdown scoring tight end, or I need Evan Engram to hit for this team to win, because this is a best ball 10s classic, so it's just winner takes all. I would have loved to have grabbed 3 defenses. The hit rates are just so much better when you grab 3 defenses as opposed to 2. Simple as that. Having said that, I did grab one of the better defenses, and I got a discount on Tampa Bay, so I was happy with that. The Denver Broncos, I think, have one of the best defenses in the football. I expect a massive bounce back from them on that side of the ball this year. So yeah, if you're looking at what I did with my team, basically Lamar Jackson, I tethered to RASHOD Bateman. We won every single fantasy league when we tethered Lamar Jackson, Mark Andrews, and Hollywood Brown 2 years ago. So it feels like I'm getting RASHOD Bateman even cheaper than Hollywood Brown was at that time. And the Lamar Jackson, Mark Andrews component of that stack literally won us leagues 2 years ago, and it was just so nice. The big stack I did on this team was Matthew Stafford, Tyler Higbee, Robert Woods, and Cooper KUPP. If you look at the most profitable stacks by some of the studies that have been done, it's wide receiver 1 paired with your quarterback 1 and your tight end 1. So those 3, it has to be your quarterback 1, tight end 1, wide receiver 1 on a team. Those are the most successful stacks, most profitable stacks. Wide receiver and quarterback is below that and stuff. But if basically the more guys you're adding at the top of a priority list, like in that pecking order, the better that profit is. And I have all 4 of the guys here with Matthew Stafford, and then Robert Woods, Cooper KUPP, and Tyler Higbee. It's a very profitable stack. And I think I'm still getting discounts on this Rams offense outside of taking Stafford in the 8th round. Beyond that, I took a bunch of bills. So I have Stefon Diggs, I have Gabriel Davis, I have Emmanuel Sanders. So Cole Beasley definitely won't be accumulating very many air yards in that Bills offense. So I think I've captured quite a bit of air yards in offense that their air yards are very appealing, because a lot of the times they're on the broken plays for Josh Allen. So, you know, we saw that offense just explode, and we know that Brian Daboll did not get a head coaching job, even though he interviewed for several of them. He's back calling plays in Buffalo, which really was like he deserves some credit for Josh Allen's unprecedented ascent that he made last year. So that's pretty much it. I do have some Falcons like Mike Davis, JAVIAN, HAWKINS, and Russell Gage as well. Evan Engram pairs to Odell Beckham, which I talked a little bit about, but you know, let me know what you think of my team. If you want me to add additional elements to these live best balls, let me know what that is, whether it's going through other teams, following other teams more, focusing more on the picks that are coming as opposed to my team and team building and some of the best ball strategy that we get into. Whatever it is, let me know. I will accommodate. And I really appreciate you guys stopping by. I'm Tyrell McLaughlin at TNFF Tyrell, at True North FFB on Twitter. Until next time.